The Bear Dreamer was awarded the 2007 Ben Franklin Award for Best New Voice in Fiction and was a finalist in Penn USA in children's literature. She and her husband have produced several documentaries for public radio, and she's currently a developmental English instructor at Oglala Lakota College. So please welcome Jamie Lee.
Thank you, Paul.
There you go.
Good.
This will be fun.
Okay, first I want to welcome the Center for Western Studies for inviting me. It was a great pleasure because I've worked hard to become a South Dakota author, and it's nice to be finally seen. So I want to start today by, the issue. I remember when my first novel was about ready to be published, and I talked to another writer, and he said, "You're going into a landmine. You're a white girl writing about Indians." And it was very interesting to me to consider that, because before I even took that step, I let all of my students at Oglala Lakota College read my book. They were my first readers. I didn't give them like good grades for finding errors, but maybe quarters or sodas or something. And I tried to do my homework. But I want to tell you, most importantly, I want to tell you the story of this book. Because it's the story of the book is, I won't say it's as interesting as the book, but it's close. I like to write in coffee shops. And so I was in a coffee shop, and I had a notebook in front of me, and sometimes I have my laptop in front of me. And I was scribbling away thinking, gee, I'd really like to I need a new story, I need some juice, I need something that's gonna bring me alive. And all of a sudden I looked up, and there was this Indian guy standing in front of me. And he said, "Are you a writer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I've had this dream. My whole life I've had this dream, and I'm looking for somebody to write the story." And I said, "Well, why don't you sit down?" Lots of people want me to tell their life stories, But I said, "Why don't you sit down and give me a little idea of it?" And he started talking about this dream that he had, and as soon as he started talking about it, he talked about it first person, as if he were the little boy who was in the dream. And he said, "Well, I'm a little boy, and I live in a teepee village, and I have this dream about a white bear. And I know that this is an important dream, and so I go to my grandfather, and I ask my grandfather, what is this white bear?" And the dream is, he's dreaming of a white bear who's been tied to a tree and who has a rope around his neck and who's bleeding. His fur is bloody and scabbed. And his grandfather tells him, "This is a very important dream. Someday you will find this white bear or something like it, and you will have to free the bear." So I'm sitting in a coffee shop, my empty notebook in front of me, this Indian man across from me, and I said, "Stop right there." So I just had this strong feeling. He didn't know that my first published short story was about a little Ojibwe boy. He didn't know that I grew up in Indian country. I'm actually from northern Minnesota, on the Leech Lake Reservation. He didn't know that I'm married to an enrolled tribal member. And so it was just one of those magical moments. And so I said, "Well, why don't we do it this way? You come over to my house, and we'll record the dream. I make no promises. We'll see what happens." And so over the next several months, whenever we could get together, Leon Hale is his name, by the way, and he's a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. And he would come over, and he would sit in my green leather chair, and it's one of those chairs that swivels. And my husband, who's the scary guy with the camera back there, that's Milt Lee. He would set up the microphone, and we would turn the recorder on, and Leon would just go, and he would start telling the story. And sometimes he would talk an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. Sometimes I would lay out on the couch and almost fall asleep. And sometimes when he was done, my swivel chair had turned completely around. So it was an interesting thing. And when it was done, I took all the tapes. We recorded 11 sessions of this dream. It was a really long dream. And plus, Leon has a way of cycling through. And so when we had the dream all on tape, Then I took a tape recorder, because I had, I won't say slept, but let's say tranced through most of it. And so then I took and I marked all of the plot points and all of the important things, because I thought that it would be important to stay true to the dream as much as I could as a fiction writer. And Leon is a very special guy. And one of the other things is that before each recording session, he would pray and burn sage or cedar, sage or sweetgrass actually, and pray, because he wanted this story to be something that would touch people. And I have the same sort of worldview that he does, that I know that rather than building cultural divides, we could be building cultural bridges. And we both agree on that. And so after the story was all recorded and I had gone through it one more time, marked the plot points, then I just said to my creative fiction writer self, go. And then I let myself do whatever I needed to do to the story, staying as true to it as I could. And this book is what came out of it. And it's called, and Leon and I argued about the title, Washaka is the name of the little boy's horse. It also in Lakota means be strong or stay strong. And so I thought that it would be inaccessible, so I added the Bear Dreamer. So, and after I wrote the whole first draft during one very nice summer and didn't like it. Typical writer, right? And I thought, what does it need? What does it need? And I kept hearing the way that Leon would say the whole story in first person. And I thought, oh, it needs to be first person. So I went back and did a whole new draft speaking first person in the story. And then I very nervously gave it to Leon and asked him and his wife to read it. And he just came back and he just said, I can't believe what you did with this story. And I did some things. I took a little bit of creative leeway. I introduced a character, which I'm going to read a little piece of. I argued with him about history. I know I'm at a history conference. And so he's in the lineage, and he tells me not to tell this, but I will just sort of suggest it. But there is in his background Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. And and he wanted to have these two stories in there, which are not quite historically perfect. So we argued about that. He prayed about that. He went and talked to his mother. His mother said, no, she can't take those out. I said, okay, you're the boss. So we tried to honor both the story and the dream that Leon had, the spirit of the dream, and then how it would all evolve. And so it's been quite an adventure, and I have to say some things that have come out of this that have been really interesting. Leon and I, when we can, make presentations like this together. And he has become not a writer, but a speaker. And he has begun to go into schools and talk to teachers and children about the old way of teachers respecting their students and students respecting their teachers. And he was, this last week we did a school, and he was saying, I never thought I would do this. I never thought I would be able to speak this way. And so something really, it's been really a good evolution of the story, and I probably could go on and on for a long time, but I want to allow a little bit of time for talking at the end. So I'm going to read a little bit, but I want to say something a little bit more about the confluence, the coming together, when they said that the theme of this conference was rivers and plains and snow and snowstorms. I thought of the mighty rivers, and then I thought of the great river of immigrants that came like a tsunami over Indian country. And then I thought of the years after, the many years after, where we are now, and these rivers trying to clarify and define and find themselves again. And I think it's really important for all of us to be very conscious of that. I love teaching at Ogallala Lakota College. I love helping my students find their voice, just like Leon is finding his voice, and so they can tell their own stories and not need me. And then I'll go tell others. So let me read you a little bit of the book. We were both very shocked when it started to do well in the world. We thought it would be kind of a local little book, and now we've had it. It's gone to Germany, and who knows? There are things on the Google that I can't even read. This will be where it's tricky to hold the microphone. I don't like podiums. So I want to read a little bit of the story. The story is of a little boy named Little Chief, and the dream that he has, and he goes to his grandfather and tells his grandfather that he's had this dream, and his grandfather says, "This is a very important dream for you. Someday you will have to go find that white bear and free him. And you don't know if it will be a bear or something like it." And so the book is kind of a series of journeys that Little Chief makes to the south of where they live in search of this white bear. And the first journey he makes outside of the boundaries of his people, and he goes off with his little cousin, and they're like 7 years old, and riding across the plains by themselves. And so I'll read a little bit of that. It was long before sunrise. Oh, and his little cousin's name is Rabbit. It was long before sunrise when we crept soundlessly out of the teepee and into the empty, open, common area. We collected our packs and the hidden buffalo robes, tying them to our horses. We did not want to risk alerting anyone by riding the horses out of the village, so we hushed them, walking far out and away before mounting. My plan was to go east until we cleared the foothills and reached the open prairie. Then we would follow the edge of hills until we were far enough south to find the hot stream. Grandfather had said 2 days' ride to this place. I calculated that the summer camp must be about where the village had been when my father and uncle had seen the others before we moved north to stay clear of them. Rabbit was quiet beside me, and we rode without talking. The night was large around us. Never had we been out this early or this far from camp. The stars seemed to press down from the heavens, and the darkness made my ears keen. I heard every sound the night contained. When we had ridden so long, the sun was finally touching the dark sky. Rabbit's silence began to worry me. In spite of our utter aloneness on the land, I felt the need to whisper, "Rabbit?" "Yes." "How are you?" He didn't answer right away. "I'm afraid, Little Chief." "The animals sleep. Nobody followed us. There is nothing to fear." "No, Little Chief. I'm always afraid." I listened to the soft clop of the horses' hooves on the dry grass and considered his words. They were almost a confession, a hum beneath the dark layer of sky. Always afraid. I knew what it must have cost my cousin to come with me on this journey. Rabbit was born afraid. His mother had died birthing him, and I wondered if that was at the center of his fear. Being in the world had cost his mother much. "Thank you for coming with me, Tanhanshi." We rode on in the silence now. I thought back to when we were small, the times I had found Rabbit alone behind a tree or hunkered behind a circle of stone, always alone. The other children had teased him, twitching their noses at him, calling him Bunny and Baby. I always felt protective of Rabbit. Now here he was riding across a dark prairie to protect me. Once I'd asked Grandfather why he'd named me Little Chief. He said it was because my skin was loose. This had confused me. I remember pinching my upper arm and saying defensively, "My skin is not loose." Grandfather laughed at me and said, "It is, my grandson. You leave your skin and crawl into other people's. You wear their skin as if it were your own, always taking care of others, always feeling their sorrows and joys. It is a necessary thing for a good leader. That is why I gave you this name." More? I'll read another little piece that comes just a little bit later. The enormity of our action had begun to settle into me. Rabbit cut a small branch and whittled the green wood with his knife, saying nothing. The night hummed with the song of crickets, the frequent skittering of some small animal, the scent of dust and dry grass. My nose, my eyes, my mouth had taken on a new form, had become larger somehow, magnifying the simple into the great. I got up, rummaged near our camp, and found a thin stick and a hollow log from a nearby downed pine tree. I sat down again and began tapping the log with the stick, humming and singing softly. I wanted to make a song for this moment, a song to express the feeling in my belly of being alone, of being unprotected, and wide open to the night. Words formed in my mind, and I hummed and then sang the words. Noisy. I have no ears, Tunkashala, until you speak, Tunkashala. I have no eyes to see, until you look, Tunkashala. My voice has no words but your words. Hear my words, Tunkashala. Hear my plea. I found the voice of my song and sang it louder, repeating the verses until each word seemed plump and alive. Rabbit hummed, whittling his wood, and finally singing along. In this way we passed the last dim hour of daylight, the song offering comfort in place of the warmth of a fire. And then, as if in unspoken agreement, we ended the song, unrolled our buffalo robes, and lay down beneath the blue-black night. I picked up my flute. I played the notes of the new song, committing it to memory, and then I laid it back and stared out at the night. Rabbit said, "That's a good song, little chief." "Thanks. We traveled a great distance today." "We did. Yes, we did." I drifted off to sleep thinking of those words. We had, indeed, traveled a great distance this day. How am I doing? Good. So the story progresses to where he goes to the place where his grandfather had told him the others had been spotted. And they have no words for the white people. And it's a kind of first contact story. And it's this that he's also intrigued by, this story of other kind of people that live in the area. And so finally, when he finds the white bear, I probably shouldn't tell you too much, right? Finally, when he and Rabbit go again to this place by the river, and they find a little white boy whose father is abusing him, who's been tied to a tree, and who's bleeding at the neck, and his neck is all scabbed over. And little chief knows instantly that this is the white bear that he dreamed of, and he names him Matoshka, which means white bear. And so you'll have to read to find the rest. It's been a real treat, like I said, to have been allowed into this world, and I was nervous at first of, again, being a white girl. And, it's an interesting thing because, and I want to talk about this and then open it up a little bit to the conversation, sometimes I wonder if the cultural divide is a divide of our own making now. And whether, like, for myself, the further I get into the lives of my students out in Pine Ridge, the closer we get to our own humanity. And I don't see them as other, and they don't see me as other. And it doesn't mean that we don't have precious things that we're both keeping from our own culture and hanging on to and preserving, and I think that's part of the magic of it. Me discovering that in them, and them discovering in me something else maybe. My goal in my classroom is to create the kind of safety that allows those voices to develop and come out. And so I wanted to just sort of throw that out and see if any of you have thoughts about that or questions about that, or even the song that I read. And I've never read that at a reading. I don't know why. We had wanted to see if a friend of ours who's a singer and who's studying to be a medicine man, if he would sing it for me in Lakota. And he came over and he kept trying, and then finally he said, "I can't do this, it's your song." And I was like, "No, that's not the way it's supposed to be." So anyway, I'll take questions, or I could read some more, whichever. Yes?
How old was Leon when he came to you?
Leon and I are almost the same age. He's a little bit younger. I'm 54 and he's 53. But he's had, that's the other interesting part, he's had massive numbers of, he's had cancer, he has arthritis, he's had a heart surgery, he's had lots and lots of physical things going on. And he feels like telling his story and having these new activities in his life has given him new life. And he has a little grandson who he's raising, whose picture is on the back of the book. And he's teaching little Leon to be a young Lakota boy, or a young Lakota man, I guess now he's becoming. So,
What age group were you aiming at with the book?
good question.
Or were you?
I wasn't really. When I wrote it, I wasn't, but of course it's about teenage boys coming of age, you know. So it's considered a YA book, a young adult book. And at the same time, when it first came out, one of my students came in and she said, she said they were reading your story at work. And I said, well, where do you work? And she said, at the Senior Citizen Center. They were reading it over the loudspeaker to the residents. And I thought, well, okay, that's a good sign, you know, young adult to whatever. Other questions or thoughts?
I agree with you that the genesis of the project is very interesting in its own right. Could you say anything more about the idea of receiving direction or plot points or characters from dreams?
Are you a writer?
Well, yes.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, both Leon and I felt like, and this enters the world of beliefs, but both Leon and I felt like this was a book that, or a story or a dream that wanted to be in the world, and he and I facilitated it. And I feel that way about other stories that I have. I have a novel that's just being sent to an agent right now that came the same way for me, like a dream. So some things like Rabbit, I introduced Rabbit. Leon did not dream Rabbit, but Little Chief without a sidekick, I couldn't make that work. So part of the fiction writer in me stepped in to fix things that, you know, I needed to fix. I needed to do research, because Leon would just say they were in the teepee village, but he wouldn't put any detail in there, so I had to go find detail, you know. So I don't know if I'm being responsive to your question or not.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes I feel like there's a layer of story out there that when we allow ourselves to get in touch with that, we just find it. I have another story that this one was so strange for me. It was actually part of another novel that I was working on, but it kept saying Albert's manuscript. And I thought, and it was a manuscript that this old man had put together over many years about a dream that he had. This will lead to my conclusion. And so I thought, I wonder what's in Albert's manuscript. This was like about 8 years after I had written the original draft. I wonder what Albert's manuscript is. And so I sat down with a brand new cheap notebook. I like cheap notebooks. And just started writing. And I wrote for 6 days. And this entire story came out, and I think it's a prophetic story that didn't come from me, you know. And it talks about the 4 eras of man. It was very interesting. It was, first there were the walkers, and then there were the watchers, and then there were the weavers, and then there were the weepers. And it was this very interesting story about the 4 levels of man that just was like, wow. And I tried to add stuff to that, and I couldn't. So, go figure. But I do have something to show you, though, that came out of that. And that I'll use that to end my story. The story of Albert's manuscript tells about the wind of 1,000 years that came over the earth and blew all the people of earth into one another, until even their colors and everything got mixed up. And so Albert's manuscript is this long story about that. And I was trying to figure out what to do with these little guys one time. These are the bead people. I got tired of making earrings one time, and so I started making bead people. And I only have 3 of them with me, but here, they're really cute. And so I thought these little guys are so cute, and look at their body parts are all mixed up. So I wrote a little short version of The Wind of a Thousand Years that tells about the bead people and how their body parts got all mixed up. And that kind of leads me to my conclusion for this session, is the idea that we are all mixed up with each other. We can't undo that. I mean, that was what the bead people decided. They decided they couldn't undo the work of this mighty wind. It had already done it, you know. And so this has been interesting too. The little bead people have gone to France, Finland, Germany, and we're doing a project in Rapid City next month for 200 alternative teenage high school kids. They're going to build 180 bead people. So that's grown. And my final sales pitch, when you come and buy one of these tomorrow, I will give you a bead people. For free. Okay, let me see how I'm doing. I have just a few more minutes if anybody has any other questions or thoughts. I think I'll just summarize myself. I don't think I can actually prioritize, but writing is one of my loves, and teaching is one of my loves, and seeing people learn to become human beings is one of my loves, and that's what I support in anything I do. I think that human bodies could be human beings if we worked at it. So, thank you.